Welcome back, everyone, to this next event here. With me, I have Zbyszek Umgelter, who is our in-house graphic designer and illustrator. You have seen a lot of his work, and now you get to see what he looks like. And I'm really excited for this presentation.
Hello, Rainer, and hello, everybody.
Do you want to tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and stuff? I know we will hear more from you and who you are and such tomorrow during the Meet the Board&Dice team, but do you want to give everyone a quick introduction as well?
I'm a graphic designer in Board&Dice team. And I've been working with Board&Dice for 2 years now. So I had some time to participate in many interesting projects during the time. And I will talk about them a little bit today.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and you'll see obviously more work as well from Zbyszek as time goes by. So, all right. As far as this presentation goes, if you have any questions during it and so forth, we'll try to take those questions as well. We know this is a very important topic and one that we like to discuss. So we're looking forward to that. Otherwise, we will also reserve some time at the end for questions as well. So we'll determine that as it goes, if it's something that we need to answer right away or if it's something that can wait until the end. So, all right. Well, I'll turn it over to you for this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Rainer. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Okay, is it visible? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so today I will make this presentation called Careful Cultural Approach from Inspiration and Research to Final Graphic Design. So basically this is about a process of gathering materials that inspire you or inspire us, basically, in Board&Dice, to use for graphic design for the games, and also an approach to how to do this properly, without getting into some traps that are laid along the way. So when we start a research for a graphic design for our games, we ask ourselves three basic questions about the theme of the game. Where does the theme of the game take place? basically you have to study the culture you are using for the theme of your game, the region, the country, so basically a place that the game is set in. Then the second question is when does it take place? So a period of time and a history of this culture you are representing in the game. And finally, the third question, what can be used for graphic design purposes? And there's a long list of things that can inspire you during this research process. So, for example, maps and landscapes and fauna and flora can give you guidelines how to depict the place that the game is set in. Then the architecture, that is both also a part of a place, of a landscape, but also it's a source of shapes and different decorations, and basically the weight of the culture itself. Then, for example, you can have a look at vehicles used in that culture and in this place, in this period of time, weapons that were used by people of this culture. Then some characteristic objects, shapes, patterns, also fashion. The fashion is different for many cultures and for many periods of time. And of course, art that is a very big source of inspiration, and also a very interesting thing that can inspire you, and you will see in examples I will show later that it might be a really interesting source of inspiration, the alphabet of a certain culture and writings, basically, that basically represent the way that the culture describes itself. And of course, there are many more. There can be many more sources of inspiration when you create graphic design. It is very valuable to go as close to the source of the inspiration in the culture. First of all, by doing so, by going as close as you can to the source, you pay respect to the culture, and basically by your designs you pass on the truth about this specific culture. And also it has, of course, an educational value. So when players play the game, they can learn something, and they can learn something that is not made up. So where would you look first for your inspiration. So where can you find the proper source? One of the first thoughts you might have in your mind is to use some kind of a searching engine, for example, like Google. Well, this is not always the correct approach at first. Why? Because search engines have a specific algorithm that will provide you popular answers rather than the correct answers. So basically, they can mix up information and provide information similar to what you are looking for. For example, I remember when we did some research for one of our pre-Columbian themed games, and I typed in Teotihuacan in Google and went to pictures, and Google showed me pictures from many other cultures mixed up with the Teotihuacan pictures. So basically it was pictures from the Mayan culture and Aztec culture and Inca culture and many, many more. So when you see this mix of many pictures from many cultures, you don't really know, you can't really know which one of them are correct, are the ones that you are looking for. So a better place to start would be, for example, Wikipedia, that has more academic and orderly knowledge, and provide you basically with one answer rather than many answers like search engines. Of course, the best way to do such a research is to go to the primary sources on history of culture and art of the theme you are researching. So what I mean here is, for example, books and magazines published by recognized sources and archives of museums and places like that. So basically the sources that are dedicated to research scientifically themes you are looking for. Now, what to look for? What you can see here is a visual representation of the list of things I mentioned earlier. These kind of mood boards will help you to visualize ideas for graphic design. And as I said, you can look at some maps, for example, to see where did the culture that is a theme of your game, where did it came from, where their place of living is situated, and what kind of landscape is around them. Also, architecture photos of architecture will show you the shapes and decorations and the light that is in a certain place that you are looking into. Then you can gather many examples of art from the researched culture, like paintings and statues and some other decorations. These are all very valuable sources of colors, of shapes, of patterns that will help you imagine the art you will create for the game you're working on. And as you can see here, the alphabet, also the writings. On this specific slide, you can see, for example, a Japanese glyph that is very characteristic for Japanese culture, and just below the hieroglyphics from the Egyptian, from ancient Egypt, and on the bottom right, a page from a medieval codex that will also show you the writing and the decorations that an artist that created this codex used to decorate this work of art. Check twice. So when you have your mood board ready, it is a wise thing to consult it with some kind of institution or a person that has a wider knowledge about the theme of the game. You can also look for an opinion of natives and, as I said, specialists connected to this culture. So basically, look for an opinion about your ideas, not to make obvious and unpleasant mistakes. Also, try to compare your ideas with other games to avoid repeating some designs that were already used in other games. For example, in Board&Dice, we use a popular portal board game Geek that is a large database for games with pictures. So it's a very useful tool to work with.
Zbyszek,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but we have two really good questions here from the chat. I'm going to put them up on the screen here. So the first one here is from Jochen for you. So he's asking, as a graphic designer, how much time do you spend in research prior to starting the design?
Well, it depends. It's not a set period of time. The research basically is an ongoing process throughout the whole process of graphic design. I'm not sure how I can answer to this question to be very specific, because really for every game it's different. Sometimes the game is so big that you need to research a lot of let's say branches of the theme to know to get to know the theme very well. And sometimes the game can be the design for the game can be based on one piece of art, really. One painting, one statue. It really is not the same every time.
And I think you bring up an important point there, right? Is the fact that there's it's not. I mean, there's certainly a matter of, first of all, how much research and consulting did the designer do before we picked up the game, for example, and then there is, depending on how much research is necessary for you to start. Like here we're talking about some of the things that you do before you start the graphic design, or before you start as you're starting to gather inspiration. But it is, like you said as well, this is really a gradual process that happens from the very beginning of when we decide that we're going to publish a game that has a certain theme, up until it goes to print. And sometimes it continues beyond that point, if there are expansions, for example, that are in the works and so forth. So it's a good question about how much time is spent on it. And I think that the answer is really that it varies, like you said, from game
It's
to game.
different every time.
Yeah. And it also depends on the access to, especially like on the previous slide where you were talking about with the cultural consultants, right? That's one of
Yes.
those things that it really depends on the access to cultural consultants, or even people that are native to a culture. Like there are some games, and we can't necessarily talk about them yet, but the games that are in the works, right, where we have been looking to get native artists involved, or we are reaching out. So it's a process. It depends on the access and how easy it is. Sometimes it's a language barrier. Sometimes it's a matter of trying to find the right people. It depends on how well a culture is documented, how much information is available about them. Sometimes there are museums that are local to that area that have lots of resources. Other times it's more difficult. But it's a great question, Jochen. So thank you for that. We also had another a question / comment from Mario. And he says that one of the things that I love about Teotihuacan are the small details on the board. You see small paintings found in the ruins of the city, and from how it's laid out. And some, the rest of the comment is cut off, but let me read it here. Some people say basically that that Teotihuacan is themeless, which is far from the truth. The PAX Premier's designer mentioned in his blog that people thinks that a game is themeless when they don't know about the theme. And just before I get to the question here from Mario, one thing that is really nice about Teotihuacan is that every piece of art that is in the game, except for two, there are two icons, one being the symbol of a die, and the other one being the generic temple symbol. Those are the only two that are not actually from different murals and artwork and statues and so forth in Teotihuacan. So there's a lot of theme in the artwork, but you're right though.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't they don't know about it, right? But the question is that Mario's asking is, how do you think we can make people aware of how detailed a theme is, how well detailed it has been developed within the game?
Good question. Well, from my point of view, it's just fun to design to design the art for the game on many levels, and I always try to look at in a kind of macro scale and micro scale when I do my designs. Later you will see some examples. I will talk about it. Where are those, even the smallest places that you can use the design to, use the inspiration to make another piece of design, even if it's the smallest thing, because people have many look at things from many perspectives, and some people just like small details and they pay attention to it, and it's very, I don't know, for me it's very rewarding to give them this opportunity to find even the smallest things.
And I think also the part of the answer here too is that we don't necessarily do this for I mean, obviously we want people to appreciate it, but we do it because we think that it's important. We think that it's important to depict other cultures correctly, and especially cultures that have marginalized or that are otherwise ones that have been where their cultural expression has been suppressed or something. It's important to, like Zbyszek said on a previous slide as well, it's important to go to the source, right? It's important to not base it on stereotypes, but go and depict it both properly and accurately and respectfully, and not based on what we think, but based on what members of that culture would find respectful.
Yes, the more you get closer to the source, the more the game is truthful, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Exactly.
And we have another another really good question here that I think we'll get back to this one a little bit later. This is from Adebar, who's asking basically about both basically feedback if people find that something is incorrectly represented, or some of the more sensitive matters and stuff. This is a longer discussion that I would love to get back to at the end, if you don't mind, Adebar. So because this is a very important topic, and thank you, by the way, to everyone who's asking questions and so forth. This is great. So, but I'll let you continue as well, Zbyszek.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. So now I will show you some examples from 4 of our games, the games from Board&Dice. As you can see here, I'm going to talk about Yedo Deluxe Master Set, Dark Ages, Tekenu, and Tawantinsuyu. So the first one is Yedo Deluxe Master Set. When we are starting working on designs for this, of course we ask ourselves those 3 important questions: where, when, and what. So where, the game of Yedo is set in Japan, in Edo, Japan, which is a city today called Tokyo. In the period of 16th century, called early modern period in the history of Japan. And from that, we can go to the question of what. What are the strong characteristic elements that we can use for the design of this game? So, for example, we can take very characteristic for the Japanese culture, simplicity and elegance, that you can already, that you can already see on the cover of this game. A very clean design, simple, white and gold, very elegant. Another very characteristic thing would be Japanese calligraphy that always catches eye of the people playing it. And well, Japanese culture is very rich, and basically everything has its own design and very characteristic and specific shape, colors, and patterns. As you will see in a minute, this is all used in the graphic design for this game. So one of the tasks we had when we started to make Yedo Deluxe Master Set, by the way, Yedo is a game that was published in 2012. Yedo is a game by 2 designers, 2 German designers, Thomas van der Ginste and Wolf Planke. And here at the top, you can see the original logo from 2012 and a part of the background of the cover. So one of the tasks we had was to refresh this cover, and as you saw in the previous slide, that's what we did. But that's what we do, sir. But what you see here on the slide is the paths that we could take, that we could have taken, and how to approach this design of this logo. So first of all, we could have taken a random font that is basically one from the group called stereotypical fonts, like this Chinese dragon you see here. That basically is when you see it, I mean the connection with the Asian culture is strong, but it's a very stereotypical font. It doesn't pay respect to the culture, so it's not the best choice. I would say it's a poor choice, actually. The other path, for example, was to go and stylize the letters of the logo in a way connected to the brush strokes used in Japanese calligraphy. Here you can see some other logotypes from other games, but it's also a very strongly used way, and we did not want to approach refreshing this logo this way. So we took another path. We took an inspiration from a weapon, an object from the Japanese culture, which is the Japanese katana, the Japanese sword. Please take a minute to look at the very characteristic shape of this object. It has a very smooth, delicate curve and very delicate shape. A very characteristic pointy end, and although it looks very delicate, it is a strong weapon, a strong object. So based on these values of this object, we created the letters for the logo. And as you can see, they are very similar to the sword, smooth curves, but yet very strong letters, symmetric shape of the logo. So I think it was a very interesting inspiration that gave us a very strong result at the end. Also, a strong element on the cover is the golden gate at the bottom, which is also connected to the title, actually, because Yedo comes from Edo, the name of the city. And actually, Edo in Japanese means bay entrance or gate to the bay. So it's not just another random choice to put the golden gate on the cover. It is a conscious choice. It is a conscious choice because Edo means gate, right? Another
Zbyszek,
yes.
could you go back to that previous slide? So one thing
Yes.
that I would like to mention here, so one thing that happens sometimes, and it happens often, and not just in games, but any graphic design where people are dealing with a culture that uses a different script than the Latin-based script. One thing that happens is that people, which is why, for example, what you showed on a previous slide, that Chinese dragon font, it's very common that people use fonts that look like something like, while they are Latin-based characters, they resemble characters from the actual script. And that happens with other another example of this is, for example, the board game Elysium, which is set in Greece, and they mix Latin characters with Greek characters that look like the Latin characters that they're meant to represent. One thing that we did with Yedo here is that, I mean, this was a process of that very directly involved Japanese people, because we wanted to make sure that while for thematic reasons, there was the desire to have the logo look Japanese and have the elements of Japanese culture, it was also important that to Japanese native speakers, that the letters would not look confusingly similar to letters in the Japanese language and in the Japanese script. So this is an example of where Japanese speakers native Japanese speakers were involved in providing that feedback and coming with suggestions of how the letters could be made so that they don't look confusing to someone who speaks Japanese. And that's the result that you see here in the logo. So that's another example of how at different parts, like we were talking about earlier, different parts in the process involving native speakers to or people native to the culture is very important for something that may not be important for us, right? Because I, for example, don't speak Japanese. I would not have found it confusing, but this is an example that we wanted to make sure that this was treating the Japanese language respectfully.
With respect, yes. Yes, that's true. Yes, so another piece of inspiration here, Japanese calligraphy. Again, what you see here are art designs that were used for the back of some cards in the game, and at the bottom you can see 5 player boards that also were decorated with some Japanese calligraphy. And again, these are not random characters. All these characters refer to the group of cards, for example, at the top, and the to say the meaning of the cards, the mechanic they are used for. For example, the big yellow card, the characters on the big yellow card mean a character, a hero. So this is the back for the character cards, the basically heroes in the game. Another card, the orange one, the character says action. The blue one says event. The purple one says a reward, a bonus. All these All these refer to the meaning of the cards. The last one, the green one, is actually quite a coincidence, because it has two meanings, but both are thematically connected to the cards. The green cards in the game are connected to the set collection mechanic, and basically what you do in the game is you collect the sets of those green cards for some victory points, basically at the end of the game. But as you can see, the character used here, those three squares in a triangle. First of all, the meaning of this character is goods, which were represented on the cards you were collecting in the game. Well, you can collect, for example, a set of teapots, or a set of Buddha statues, or a set of samurai armor. So basically, these are all goods, and the character used here also means goods. And the other way you can look at it is that these three squares that are representing the character are a set of objects, a set of squares that basically they represent the meaning of themselves, right? The three squares as a set. So it's like very intuitive. What does it mean? What the card represents? And at the bottom, as I said, you can see 5 player boards with those characters. These refer to the colors you use in the game. Player colors: black, blue, green, yellow, and red. These are the meanings of those characters. Here you can see some details also used in the game. For example, Tokugawa emblem. During this period that the game takes place in, Tokugawa family took the power in Japan and moved the capital to Edo. So using the emblem of this family is very, very proper for the theme of game of Yedo. So this emblem was used in many places in the game, on the back of the cards. Some were hidden as a decoration. Even when we did a Kickstarter campaign for this game, we also used the Tokugawa emblem for some headers, and really in many places in the graphic design for the game. The Japanese fan. So what you see here, the picture of geisha in a white hex. This is a design of a geisha token from the 2012 first edition of the game. But when I was designing, when I was thinking about refreshing some shapes and some designs for this game, I thought that hex is maybe not the obvious shape that that refers to the Japanese culture, and I thought that it would be really nice to use a shape of a fan for this one. So we changed the shape of this token to a shape of a fan, as you can see on the right. Now going back to what I said about the smallest details. Here, for example, the shape of a flower was used as just a small bullet point in the text. It could have been a simple dot, but we decided to make it a small flower, which is, I think it's just a nice touch, and again something that people that like details can appreciate. And also some other patterns and a specific location of the things used in patterns were also used on the back of the player boards, as you can see on the back of the green player board. Also the brush strokes from the calligraphy, we use those for the background of titles of cards and basically a bigger typography that was used in the game. Oh, sorry. Yes. So about checking things twice. Here on the left, you can see an illustration one of our artists made for mission cards that appear in the game. And when we saw this art, we made a connection between this art, the rays, sun rays in the background, with a very characteristic Japanese flag called Rising Sun flag. And here you can see a piece of text taken from Wikipedia, talking about controversy about this flag. Because in some countries, as you can read here, for example, South Korea or China, this flag is connected to is basically seen as a very offensive symbol connected to the Imperial Japanese that were occupying South Korea and China, and during the World War II. But as you can see below, in present day use, this symbol became a part of pop culture and is used in many places. So it is not that much of a let's say a problem, but it is good to know when you are designing things like that. It is good to know that in some places it might be controversial. It is good to know, to be aware of some cultural differences and fragile topics. Second example would be the game of Dark Ages. Dark Ages is a game designed by Adam Kwapiński and Andrzej Nowak, and it's a game that is in 2 boxes, which will be relevant in an example I will show later. So again, 3 questions: where, when, and what. Game of Dark Ages takes place in early medieval Europe, in between 9th and 13th century. And strong characteristic elements for this game are feudal and religious influences, crude raw style, and simple art and decoration. First, let's see the logo. So the font used here in the logo is based on the Uncial script. And here we had, during the design process, we had a choice between basically 3 scripts that are connected to medieval ages. First of them is Roman letters. They were basically way before 9th century, during the Roman Empire times, and they are still used today as a part of a Latin alphabet. And other very strong connection to the medieval ages is, of course, a Gothic script, but the Gothic script appeared in 12th century. So basically at the very end of the period we are depicting here in the game. So basically the best choice was to use Uncial because it was present between 4th and 10th century, which is the closest period to the period we are representing in the game. Some graphic elements, for example, like frames in the game, also inspiration came from the codexes of that period. Here on the left, you can see ivory tablets there that were the first inspiration that we had our eye on, but it didn't work so well. So because we wanted, for example, the cards to look like more like basically medieval documents, and that's why we reached to the early medieval codexes. And as you can see, they are not very much decorated. The art is still very simple was very simple at the time. And also the decorations were simple. Later, during the Gothic times, the art and the decorations became much more rich. Going simple was a much better choice and more proper. Religious and feudal influence is also depicted in the game. Here you can see the designs for action boards. Action boards in this game are like an additional board you set by the main board, and it is used to mark players' actions and acquiring cards that you use in the game. And also you can see that there is a something called culture track that also is used in the game, and you move some markers along it. So between two boxes, you can see that one box has the action board looking like a pulpit of some medieval monk. So here the religious influence is used, and on the right the action board from the second box that looks more like a stone table of some feudal lord or a king, person that is much more rich. So the next slide, yes. Another, let's call it a trap that you can encounter. The rosary issue. At the top, you can see how it looked, how this culture track I talked about, how it looked in a prototype. A very simple track of many spaces, many small spaces. When I saw it for the first time, the connection with the rosary appeared very quickly, and I thought it was a good idea to depict it like that in the game. So the players move their markers along the rosary. So I made a design, which you can see in the middle, the rosary idea. And I consulted it with our team in Board&Dice. And after a long conversation, we decided that it is not the best solution for this design, because first of all, rosary is a very important object for people that are part of Christian Catholic Church, and it might be, for example, offensive for them for the symbol to be used in the game. And also, what you see here is not an exact depiction of rosary, because the construction rosary is basically made in a different way. It has more beads, and it's very, very specific and important how it is made. So basically, we decided it's not, although it looks nice, it's not the best way to depict this culture track. And we went with another design, which is this line and belt idea with nice embroidery, floral pattern, also very it took from the period of early medieval ages. Also, some another details here in Dark Ages, inspired by crest of Charles the Great, who is basically a very important character in the game, and also the initials, decorative initials from the codexes. Combining those two, it gave us a nice initial we used for the Kickstarter campaign, and also details on the cards, some dividers in the text. Also were took from the codexes of this period. Another example, the game of Tekenu by Daniele Tascini and David Turchi, set in ancient Egypt in the Karnak Temple, in period around 2000 years before Christ. And the strong characteristic elements here were the obelisk. The Tekenu is basically the name of the obelisk in the Karnak Temple. The hieroglyphs, which is again the alphabet of ancient Egypt, and it's really hard to imagine making a graphic design for ancient Egypt theme without hieroglyphs. A warm palette of colors. Egyptian gods, also very characteristic for this culture, and golden art. Hieroglyphs, icons. So, as I said, when you make a game about ancient Egypt, it's really hard not to include the icon language. This is a pure inspiration for this, and basically the language of those small pictures is the language of the whole game. As you can see here at the bottom, the icons are used very much in the game to represent different actions you can do, different effects, and also it helps to make the game language independent, so without using text in a specific language, right? So you can play the same game in English, in French, in German, in Spanish, and so on and so on. Again, frames, so basically decorative elements that appear on different components of the game. Here you can see the player board and a part of main board, the point track, some other frames that appear in the game. All of these are inspired by the paintings on the walls of Karnak Temple. Some details in the game. For example, we used pictures of reconstructed houses from the ancient Egypt period. Not to use the classic triangle roof meeples, but to make shapes more connected to the theme of the game. Also, there was a very interesting track that was depicted on the main board, and it was very important to make it the shape you can see here. So basically the wings of the statue and the numbers on them had to be depicted exactly as you in the configuration you see here. So so one of the inspirations for that was the wings of Mat, the goddess Mat. Also, things like well-known Tutankhamun mask can be just used in graphic design for the pure decoration. Here you can see it was used as a decoration for another track on the main board of the game. And our last example, Tawantinsuyu, a game with the theme of Inca Empire, 12th to 16th century. The strong characteristic elements here is a stone architecture, the landscape, gold, and weavings. So first, the stone motif. The stone dominates very much in the city of Machu Picchu. You can see here, which was the center of this culture, and it is famous for it. So we decided to use this element very strongly in the game. As you can see on the right, it was used for many things. The point track, the frames for the areas of the game, the background art, the icons like the arrow at the bottom here, and also of course the logotype. It's all made of stone. Very characteristic element and obvious inspiration. For those who don't know what Tawantinsuyu mean, Tawantinsuyu basically mean 4 kingdoms, 4 regions of the Inca Empire. And there is an element in the game that allows you to send your warrior meeples to conquest those 4 regions. And I thought it would be a really nice touch to decorate these 4 areas of the game with a specific depictions of landscapes characteristic for those 4 regions. So what I did here, I took a map of the Inca Empire from that period. I saw how it is divided, and then I went to Google Maps, and basically I was looking for photographs characteristic of landscapes characteristic for these 4 regions. And as you can see here, I chose 4 of those photographs and turned them into illustration on the main board. Gold and statues, very characteristic for art, for Inca art. Also, as you can see, used to design the graphics for a temple track on the board, and also for the statues you can collect during the game. So another set collection mechanic that needed some sort of graphic design, and I thought the statues were perfect for that. And for the last one, weavings. Weavings also very characteristic for the Inca culture. Here the inspiration was used in 2 ways. First of all, there's a weaving mechanic in the game. You collect those tiles you can see at the top for gathering resources and receiving some points during the game. So basically, these look like the original Inca weavings. But also in the game, there's an element of spaces that you put your meeples on. And those spaces in the prototype were marked by letters from A to F, A, B, C, D, E, F. And what I thought to myself when I approached this design, I thought that basically Latin letters, Latin alphabet is strange to Inca culture. And it would be weird, again, this is a detail that does not fit to the theme of the game. So I took some very simple, 6 very simple shapes from the original Inca weavings, and that's what was used for those 6 symbols that replaced Latin letters. And also here you can see some details, inspirations for details in this game. There is a, for example, festival token you can collect in the game. So why not depict the festival that is recreated by people of this region that is connected to an Inca festival and a praise for the Inca king. And what better for the symbol of victory points than the crown of the Inca king himself. So you can see the Inca crown shape became the victory point symbol in this game. Also, Incas had a very specific and characteristic shapes of their weapons and armory. They were also used in the game. For example, the conquest icon, which is the top right picture. It is a very common symbol, two swords crossed and a shield in the background. But here you can see that it is depicted in an Inca way. It is and two Inca weapons crossed and an Inca shield. So again, details, even small details in the game can also be designed from the inspiration from the real source. And an icon of resource gathering in the game. Also, you can see that people of this culture have a very specific way of transporting their belongings. So that also found a way to become a design in the game. Okay, thank you very much. These were the four games I wanted to talk about. Rainer?
Yes, thank you, Zbyszek, for that. And thank you for really going into a lot of detail and showing some examples of games and so forth. There are a couple of things. First of all, if anyone has any questions for Zbyszek, we still have some time. But I want to go back to a question from Adebar from previously.
Mm-hmm.
So Adebar was asking a very interesting question. Basically, have you, as in have we as the publisher, received any feedback or reaction from people who might find the product or material incorrectly represented? And also, what are, in your opinion, the most sensitive matter to approach and might have been one that you received any form of reaction from? I think it's the most important thing really when it comes to this whole question really is that I don't think that it's not our place to so I mean I even though I live in the United States now, I was born and raised in Sweden. Zbyszek is from Poland. We have experiences that are based on our upbringing, where we were born and raised and so forth. Neither of us have a direct connection to Japan, for example. We're not natives of Japan. We haven't even adopted that culture through language or anything else. It's not up to us to decide what's sensitive to Japanese people or what's especially important in the Japanese culture. Certainly we do some initial research, right? What Zbyszek was talking about, going to starting somewhere to say, okay, well, what can I do to start somewhere in order to find sources that are as close to, if not ideally, of course, native to that culture, right? But we still don't know and have a full understanding of what are some of the most important elements to that culture, what are some that are more sensitive, and so forth. And I think this is an area where we have no problem admitting that there's room for improvement, right? We strive to continue to improve. Our goal is to get better and better. We continuously expand the way that we approach things. For example, there is a game that is still in the future, and even though I don't want to specifically talk about the theme of it right now, there's a game where the first thing that we did was to say, okay, before we proceed, we need to basically find a cultural consultant. That was the first step. We've gotten better at that, of saying, okay, well, the first step is to find cultural consultants, find people that are native to the culture, and start there, rather than doing what I think, and I know there are specific examples, especially in the past, before we improved in some of these areas, right? Where we may have done a lot of research, put in a lot of time and effort, and basically once the product is finished, we have gone to a source and basically said, okay, well, this is the final product. Please check it off and see if that's okay. Now,
Yeah.
that is of course better than nothing, right? But that's not the right path to take. The right path to take is to involve them as early as possible and let them be part of this process. Let them tell the story of their culture. Let them be the ones that are determining this. So to answer your question, Adebar, have we...
Sorry, Rainer, that's exactly why I said at the beginning that that we consult the ideas for the graphic design before we design it,
right?
To avoid mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, even like I'm talking ones that in like years ago, where there are things that we have changed and continue to grow in that area. And in fact, we are also expanding who we work with and how much we work with cultural consultants. We are also working on getting better at documenting these things in the rule books. It's not... We understand that not only is this important for people who will enjoy these games, but it's also it's a way for us to show respect that and document, okay, here is our process. This is the cultural consultants, and highlight them because they are the ones that actually made often the games possible. And that's one of the things that we're right now striving to improve, right? You will find in past rule books that this is unfortunately an omission on our part to give proper credits to people that we have consulted with. And that's one of the things that we are changing now to make sure that we can properly give credit and highlight them. But this is a very, very important question, right? And I think that it all comes down to what Zbyszek was saying early on, that obviously we do as much research as we can, or I should say Zbyszek does as much research as possible up front, going to native sources, researching the proper culture, art expressions, and so forth of that time period. And then we also consult with members of that culture. So it's one of those, and the reason why I wanted to leave this question for now, Adebar, is, and hopefully you're still here, is because it's an important question. And basically, if anyone has follow-up questions and comments in this regard, I think this is something that is important to discuss, right? It's about, Zbyszek showed a lot of good examples of how this has been incorporated, but the path there, the path that is taken is just as important as the final result as well.
Yeah.
Agree
100% here.
Yep. And by the way, lots of people are very happy with. They say that this was an amazing presentation, and even throughout, people were saying they found this very interesting and fascinating. So, really, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope
also,
it was a pleasant experience for you.
Here's a question from Jochen. There's another question from Jochen from previously that I made a note of, but I'm gonna Jochen just ask this. So, what's your favorite game that you have done the graphic design for?
From these 4 examples I've shown here, I think Tawantin Suyu is my favorite. This game was designed by me and also a very good friend of mine, Oleg Zawada, and we worked on some other games. Also, he was also a part of Tekenu project and also a part of Dark Ages project. So we have experience working together, and I think from game to game we are doing better and better designs. And I think Tawantin Suyu is really I'm very fond of it, and it gave me a great pleasure to work on it.
We also have a question from worker placement here that basically, although this was I clicked on the wrong one, but Jochen also said that you should put some art. But this is the one that I meant to click on, which was just above it. How many games do you design at the same time?
Actually, we are working on 1 or 2 games at the same time in Board&Dice. It's actually a very good thing for me. I like to focus very much on one thing that I'm doing. So this style of work suits me pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in general, we try to, as much as possible, even though we have as a company, we have multiple games that are in different stages, right? But
yes,
within each, so for example, Zbyszek, who does graphic design and art, is working on that right now, while there are other games that are currently in development, and then there are other games that are in final testing and production and so forth. So there are multiple stages in that. So as a company, we work on multiple games, but the goal is to have each department be able to focus on one step in that process at any one time.
Yes, at a time. Yes, one step at a time.
And Adebar also said that he thanked for the answer and understand that sensitive matters might not be known beforehand, even with thorough research. And that's really the point, right? Is that it's deceivingly easy to get trapped in thinking that the research was sufficient, right? And I'm not saying that we are perfect at this today, right? We are. I know that there's room for improvement. We are continuing to do better, and it's that, and that's the point, right? Is that we have to both acknowledge what we do well, and we also have to recognize that we can do better.
Yeah.
And there will be some.
This goes back to the first question, which was how much time do we spend on research? The research is an ongoing process. Even at the very end, we can still make some research and be more aware of things about our theme, right?
Right. And it's also something we will have some very exciting news and announcements coming in this area here in the very near future, with regards to cultural consultants and partnerships that we have formed, and some of that will be coming next week, and we're very happy to share about that. And these are discussions that we will continue to have. We've had these a couple of times on previous streams. We have these a lot internally. We also have them with people that we work with, and we will continue to discuss these topics. By the way, Daryl Andrews, thank you for being here. By the way, you're asking if you can watch this later. Yes, so you should be able to watch it later on both Facebook and Twitch. But we're also after this is all done, basically, we're going to take this whole stream, even though this is a big continuous stream, we're going to cut it up into smaller chunks, and we're going to put it on our YouTube page, and we'll make sure that we announce that as well. Here's another question about the game theme, and there's a related question before from Jochen. So let me put this one on the screen about the game theme. Do you include the graphic designers into deciding about it? And Jochen also asked earlier, as a graphic designer, how much freedom of creativity do you have? Do you have to explain every design decision, or do other people double check the designs and make sure that it's accurate?
When it comes to checking, well, I think the standard procedure is for me to design the art, and then show it to my colleagues at Board&Dice to see how they feel about it. As I mentioned earlier, for example, the Rosary issue was an example of such a discussion, and basically the process of presenting the work to other people in the company. So I think it's a teamwork. It's a teamwork. And about including graphic designers into deciding about the theme of the game. Yes, that's also true. Many of our games are come to us from game designers with a specific idea for what the theme of the game should be. But there were some cases where the game did not have a theme, and we were deciding on which theme would be the best for this specific game. Or, for example, the theme proposed by the designer was actually very difficult to research. We had this issue with the game Origins First Builders, because the original idea was different for the theme, but it was very difficult to research. There was very little information about the culture that was an idea for the theme, for the original theme. So at the end we voted and we changed it for something else. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is like you said. I mean, it's definitely a very much a teamwork process, right? This is something where we are all we discuss this at multiple levels. We're also trying to just improve our internal education. Sometimes we catch a few things internally, like with the rosary. Sometimes we catch things based on some familiarity that we may have with different cultures, but other times we don't, right? And that's why this is never it doesn't end until it goes to print. There are different points in that process where some things may be caught, some things may be seen either by us internally, by playtesters, by our localization partners, and also, of course, by cultural consultants and other people that we consult with at any stage in that process. Which is why it's also important to focus on it, right? So that we have more concrete things to show. So that's why also the process of creating the artwork, for example, all takes place in a chunk of time, right? So that way it's easier to present the whole thing and work through those things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here if there are any other questions here. So here's a question that does not have to do with basically it does not have to do with cultural representation, but this is still important when it comes to graphic design. So how far do you consider accessibility in design? Color blindness, for example, can affect a lot of players. Do you consider the use of symbols as a standard where the game mechanics allow?
Yes, actually, that's very important for us in Board&Dice. Some of our team members are in fact colorblind, and some of game designers we work with are also colorblind. So that's actually a standard for us to design things that are accessible for as many players as it can be. The use of symbols is also a common practice in our designs. So at this point, it's kind of a standard for us. Yeah.
It's definitely easier with some games than others. Like Dark Ages is one. If you do a full 8-player game of Dark Ages, there will probably, well, we know for a fact because of the number of just the sheer number of player colors plus other colors that are involved in just common components, right? That there are some levels of color blindness that will not be able to distinguish every single player color from the other one. But there are enough of them where you'll be able to find for sure a set of colors, and for sure within each box. It's just if you combine all 8 of them that there will be there can be some minor issues. But like Zbyszek said, this is important, and it also comes down to other aspects of it. It's not just we actually opt for symbols as much as possible, just to make translation easier, to go with symbols instead of words on cards, for example, and symbols on tokens and so forth. And it's important that they're clear and easy to understand and read, and that if color is part of the identifying factor, there has to be something else as well that helps set it apart. So often color and shape, or color and symbol, and so forth. And also in general, I mean, this also comes down to just usability, right? Which is why you, for example, you play every game that we so that will help you in the graphic design, and that's why we also do a lot of play testing and blind play testing and so forth. And it also comes down to the rule books as well, of trying to improve them so that it's easy for people to learn and understand. And especially because we know that depending on the parts of the world, sometimes people who are not native English speakers will still play a game that has an English rule book. So it all comes down to basically that whole package of treating each board game as its own. And we that's why we don't have a fixed set of player colors, for example, because it depends on, okay, what resources are in the game. Do they need to communicate something through color and shape and such? So it's just a matter of that whole process. Let's take one last question here, which is, do you still get excited about learning about different cultures?
Yes, of course. Working on board games, especially that are themed with themes are inspired by some culture or some history period or things like that. This is really interesting. You gather such an amount of knowledge about it along the way. I'm really glad because I'm learning something interesting every day when I design. So it's a great experience and very rewarding, very interesting, and it keeps the work fresh, which is very important.
Yeah, and I agree. It's the same thing for me. I've always been fascinated by other cultures, and in that I mean the whole spectrum of it, right? I've always been fascinated in, even when I lived in Sweden, the subtle differences, and sometimes not so subtle, between Sweden and Norway, for example, two countries that have had very, very close relationships and a very strong brotherhood over the years, and there are still big differences in the culture. And then, of course, as I got older and just learned more about the world around us, and as I've traveled and so forth, it's something that I find both fascinating and also something that I have a lot of respect for people of other cultures, because I know that where I grew up, I have a completely different background compared to other people, and I want to learn. I strongly believe that, and I shouldn't just say we as a company, we believe that it's important to learn about cultures and to educate ourselves, and we, not only is that necessary for what we do, but it's also something that we all enjoy. We enjoy that process of learning and exploring and just becoming more educated on cultures and such in general. So, all right. Thank you again, Zbyszek. Thank you also to everyone who has been listening and watching, and for all the great questions and the great conversation that we had here. This is both a very interesting and a very important topic as well.